Hi guys, it's Blackie. Hope y'all having a good day today. We've got a little bit of wind and cool blowing in south down here right now. I'm here now. Everybody's experiencing a little bit of a cold snap right now. You know, we didn't think winter was done, did we? Yeah. 80 something degree days and warm nights, and poof, back gonna be 34 tonight. I think it's actually going up. Last night was like 36, something like that. And I think tonight it's supposed to be like 39, 40, something like that. So not too bad. Gray Wolf, good evening. Gary Graham, good evening. Midlife Wanderings, good evening. Mopar, good evening. Gray Wolf, you did good. You did make it. Jeff, hello to Newfoundland, Canada. Y'all got to excuse me choke a little bit. We've got the pine pollen this year is bad. I mean, it's a yellow brick road. Everything is yellow. I went to shoot a video with Bear. I'm going to be deleting the Blackbird playlist. It's all the videos about me developing it and etc. Those are all going away because they got old information in them that's no longer applicable. So I'm going to replace all of them with one video that's me talking about each one of my components, and that will probably either come up Friday or Saturday, depends. And that way I can get everybody on an even playing field, because some of the emails I tell people to go to in those videos I don't have access to anymore. So that's coming up. But anyway, I'm going to shoot this video over with Bear, and the shelf on the wall was yellow. So I took the brush and I brushed all of it off, and I turned around and picked up the pack. When I turned back, it was just yellow. And I went, and it went whoosh, all of the pollen blew off of it. So I wiped it all off again. 1, 2, 3. Whoosh. It was just falling out of the air. It was that bad. Donald, good evening. Midlife, how's the weather for y'all? It's in it right now. It's about 50 with about 30, 40 mile an hour winds blowing through, but we're doing okay. Stacy, hello to West Virginia. Michael Stewart, good evening. Karen, hello there to Pennsylvania Wanderer, excuse me. Oh, yeah, New Mexico, I hear you. Backwoods Rambler, good evening. Hey, you did good, Gray Wolf. No problem. Glad you did. Richard, hello. Rick, hello. 2020, good evening. Bannock time. Yeah, good. Be a good night to be baking bread, to be honest. Eric, wow, y'all are typing like crazy. I'll catch back up. Flecktarn. This is actually a German, I believe, that I got from years ago. It's a smock, and I actually talk about it in the video that I think I'll be posting tomorrow about a field shirt. But it's a German smock. Yeah, German. Had them for a long time, but it's really good at cutting wind. And that wind is pretty cool and blowing pretty hard out there. So I just put on this as a windbreak more than anything. Bear's in the house. Good evening, brother. Mitch, Blackie, is a 45 auto Glock overkill for the woods gun? Not really. It as long as you're accurate and can place your shots, it's perfectly fine. I've known guys that use 1911s, so the cartridge has been out there. I knew guys that used 1917 Smith & Wessons. So, yeah, it can work well as a field gun. As long as you can place your shots, that's what matters. Good evening, Justin. Let me catch back up. Ronald, good evening. Randy, good evening to Rogers, Arkansas. Oh, Gary, good. You're using that sharpener. I hope it works well for you. Okay. Is a 1911 reproduction still an Indian trade gun? Kinda. You know, it's one of them things where the Indian trade guns was a gun of questionable quality a lot of times that was issued out. So it became kind of synonymous with a working man gun. The single shot shotgun is the modern trade gun. Now, whenever I was a kid, there were single shot shotguns everywhere. Whenever you started out, you got a single shot to begin with. And that was the gun. Well, it was direct flow down from those days. And so, you know, like a 1911 reproduction, yeah, at a good price, it'd be kind of like the equivalent of a trade gun and a handgun. So, yeah, which I like the Tisa Turkish. I've got one. Shoots very, very well. Yeah, not only was it that way, it was yellow. All right, let me jump back up here and catch up with everybody. Number one, Big Bear, good evening. James Singer, good evening. Kelly Brooks, hello there. City and Survival, good evening. Brett Johnson, good evening. Okay, Justin, take your time, brother. Jeff Hansen, good evening. Andy Knight, hello to South Georgia. Big E Knife Nut, good evening. Gear Boy Forge, hello there. Oh boy, you think, okay, Grey Wolf, I think Verastulika, very dangerous word on a Scrabble board, has Swiss Camo. That'd be cool. Patriot Preacher, good evening. All right, Gary, good luck with the knife sharpening. Hunter, good evening. Mike Bolton, hello to Washington State. George Lauro, good evening. I want to say that is Shiguri. Cigaruri. I'm going. If I mispronounce it, I do apologize. My southern tongue can only do so many consonants and vowels, but at glance I think Shiguri. So. Yeah. Marvin, hello to Tennessee. Bob Nolan, hello from Southwest Ohio. SKS Hugo, good evening. Timothy Laurie, good evening. Yeah, the talking about a field revolver or a handgun or something. As you guys know, I did a cap and ball revolver. I do a cap and ball revolver. Loved them, liked the challenge of it, learned how to run them in the field. But I also had modern guns as well. And I've carried 1911. I've carried 357. I've carried a 44 Magnum. I've carried a Walker, you know, as a field gun for camping trips and fishing, hunting, etc. If you're accurate with it, feel it's reliable, and can place your shots, absolutely go right ahead. I have known guys that were very accurate with 9mm and could squirrel hunt with a 9mm. You know, it just depends on the person and the gun. And so, and really, I thought of it, things were a little different on YouTube. I would have done a field handgun series talking about, you know, modern guns. How about a 38 Model 10? They were everywhere when I was young. They were the cheap gun. You can still pick them up. There's several places you can get them today that are police trade-in guns coming out of Europe. And so you got like a heavy barrel Smith & Wesson Model 10 for like 400, 450 or less. And it's a 38 special. It'll handle anything you want to put in it. Accurate, got good sights, and for shooting small game, snake defense with shot loads. There's plenty of shot loads available for 38. Not a lot of kick, not a lot of recoil, cheap and easy to reload. 38 be real good for a field gun. Right in there in the parallel, it's right in the same wheelhouse as a cap and ball 36. That's where the 38 came from. So it's much lighter and handier though than the 51 Navy, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Jeff Conley, what type of grind on a bushcraft knife do you prefer? A Scandi, a saber, etc.? I like a saber personally, but I've had all of the above and used them. It just depends on the knife and what job it's being asked to do. Scandi is great when you're doing carving on softwoods. I prefer a Scandi on that. Thin blade, you can get in there and do a lot of small blades, do turns and stuff. When you come up, you want more of a belt knife, I prefer a saber. Ken Aldridge, good evening. Well, hello, Sandy in Malvern, Arkansas. Oh, yeah, Ruger Mark II, yeah. My adoptive brothers, David and Micah, both carried Ruger Mark IIs as field guns and harvest small game, take care of snakes, whatever, and can put them exactly where they want them at rapid fire. So it can be very effective. One is not effective on something big. 10 of them is, So as David used to say, it's a single shot buckshot. How many buckshot pellets does it take? Single shot buckshot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How about that? That's more than a shell of a shotgun. I can put them all in the same place. So, hey. Oh, well, thank you very much. It's Siguri. Okay. Gray Wolf, yeah, the 38 is great because you got a 357, you can scale it down easy into any of the 38s, and then you can scale it up in the power level, and it gives you the most flexibility in power levels. A nice lever action 92 in 357 is great for the field because you can drop a round ball and a light load of powder in it, and you can hunt rabbits and squirrels with it. Just put a round ball in the case, and it shoots about like an old muzzleloading squirrel gun. At the same time, drop in a 38, and what comes out the barrel, because the longer barrel and holding the pressure, it actually scales up velocity. A standard 38 and a rifle comes out the barrel like a 357 out of a handgun. A standard 357 comes out of the barrel like a 35 Remington, which is a favorite bear cartridge up in Maine and stuff. So it can be very effective. I've had several and been very happy with all of them. Sparrow Bushcraft, hey brother, glad you dropped in. Oh, William Moffett, yeah. Cattails for a fire roll. Are you watching the David West channel? He is the master of primitive fire. He really is. Tiny Titan, long time no see. Yep, wet Oregon. Squidward, good evening. Randy T, good evening. Yeah, but Mike Bolton, back in the day, the SKS and the AK that took the AK mag, or just the SKS, was a cheap gun. We get them $65 a piece when they first brought them in. Now they're $600 and $700 when you can find one. So to me, there's other guns I can put behind the seat of the truck. I fully understand that. I've had SKSs, AKs. They're good deer guns at close range. Of the two, I'll take the SKS over the AK for a hunting gun. Tim Pierce, glad to do it. Thanks for watching. Okay. Gear Boy, speaking of knife edges, how are you supposed to sharpen a Mora knife? I had one once and it destroyed it trying to figure out how to resharpen it. That's a lot of times where it's got a lot of a bevel, but the edge bevel is small. And once you kind of get that out of the way, you just end up with a blunt chisel. And the best thing to do is lock it in a vise, get a file, and start a bevel. You want that bevel to be about the width, I tell people double the thickness of a nickel wide, whatever that is, 1/8 of an inch wide, whatever it is, on both sides. Take a file and put it in even on both sides, and then take it back to a stone, whatever it is. And I've had knives that people have rolled the edge trying to sharpen and just screwed it up. That's how I just reset everything to 0. I'll just take a file and create a new bevel from scratch, and then go back over to my stones and do it. And when things are really bad sometimes and you don't want to go to a file, I would go get wet sandpaper, wet dry sandpaper from the auto supply places, and cut it in strips and glue it to those big wide paint stirring sticks for 5-gallon buckets. They're bigger and thicker than a standard stirring stick. And I'd glue strips on, so like an inch wide strip, about 10 inches long, and use them to put a bevel onto a knife. And then I'd have progressively more polished sandpaper. So I'd start out with like a 200 something grit, and I'd go all the way up to like a 2400 grit. And that's a polished edge. And I have taught people how to make a polished edge. Now, when you're trying to show off how sharp you can make a knife, you make a polished edge. It's not as good for actual cutting and using, but man, you can cut anything with it. It's just like it's a laser beam, but it will not hold up because it is so thin and so polished that it will dull easily. But for that one quick showing your buddy how sharp your pocket knife is, that's the way to do it for bragging rights. Sasquatch Jimmy Outdoors. Hello to Phoenix. Yeah, correct, Justin Coon. 7.6239 with proper hunting ammo. The performance is very, very close to 30-30. And so the two guns perform about the same. Okay, Sparrowhawks, I hope to see you then. Oh. Squidward, does the larger Army handle come with a stronger, longer mainspring? Actually, the springs are exactly the same. If you're talking about going from like an 1860 to a 51 Navy, could you swap it? Yes, you can. You birdie to you birdie having a mental blank. The other one, there is, there's you birdie, and then there's the other percussion gun company that's so big. Yes, you just make sure it's the same one, but you can put the 1860 Army grip onto a 51 Navy or vice versa. And it's the same spring. It's just where the spring is inside the handle. See, on the 51 Navy, it's further down. On the 1860 Army, it's further up. It just makes the handle longer. Good evening, Miss Pam. A real telling thing with all the cap and ball guns is to get the Dixie Gun Works catalog, and you start looking. Pieta, that's it, the Pieta. You start looking at the parts, and you see what's the part number for the main spring that goes in 1860. It's exactly the same part number for the 51 Navy, the 61 Navy, and I even think there's another one. It's the same exact part number. It's the same spring. And so you'll figure out right quick what parts are interchangeable that way. It'll kill. Blackie, what's the deal with ice-tempered knife blades? The colder the water, the harder the quench, and therefore the harder the edge of it. But the more brittle the edge. And so you can, if you quench into water, is a harder edge than if you quench into oil, and the temperature of those oils make a difference. I remember reading in depth about a knife maker back in the 1800s. And he would make blades all year round, but he only did his quenching, his heat treat, in one particular time of the year because he wanted the air temperature to be a certain way and temperature of the water and everything else, the oil, so that whenever he pulled it out and quenched it, and everybody bragged that he always produced a superior edge. And he always said that he had about 4 to 6 weeks a year where he could quench and get the results he wanted. Any other time, it was an inferior edge in his opinion. And so therefore, it's just about cooling it down and making it a little harder, but therefore it will be a little more brittle. Charles Martin, I'm doing well. Yeah, Frank. You watched my video on it. Yeah, that razor blade steel, AEBL. I have not tried it from anybody else's, but several big noted individuals in the knife industry have verbally said that there's like 4 people in the world that have really figured out AEBL, and William Collins is one of them. So, like I said, if it ain't going to be coming from William White Knife Steel, 01 Tool Steel would be my choice. You know, I'm sure there are a lot of other knife steels out, and there are, with all kinds of designations and everything else. I'm not that versed in it. And I know exactly what I can do with the 01 Tool Steel and how well it's going to hold up in the field. So, plus the fact, a lot of times when you start going into those, what I call voodoo steels, they got all kinds of stuff. They were built for a purpose. I grant it that. They do a great job, great, but they're normally really expensive. You know, you can double the price of the knife by the steel you choose. And, you know, I'm not wanting a house payment. I'm wanting a knife. You know what I mean? So that's the reason I choose 01 Tool Steel. Not terribly expensive steel, but it produces a good result. Charles Martin, what do you think of blades with a black coating on them to keep from rusting? That can be a good thing. It really can, but it makes it where you can't use a ferro rod on it because that coating slides on a ferro rod. You got to have bare, like a 90 degree. And if you coat it, it makes it rounded and it won't work. So you got to be without the coating to get it. Now, what a lot of people would do is like a Garberg or whatever that's got a coating, or some of the others that's got coatings on them. They'll just take a file and make a place without coating, that like ½ inch where they can use for a ferro rod. That'll work. But it does a good job, especially what are you doing? If you're primarily a hunter and you're wanting a knife that's going to be in blood, guts, and gore and everything else, yeah, coating is great. Stainless is great. Because you've got to keep blood from etching it, and blood will etch steel. It's acid enough. And so therefore coatings like that is a big advantage. It just depends on what you're doing, is what kind of things, you know, you need to go with. I like just a plain old patinaed blade to me, but at the same time, I understand black coatings. Uh, Ken Albridge, yeah, actually, they talked about how the historic bowie that was made for resin bowie and that later ended up with gem bowie had been quenched on a really cold morning. So, and it held an edge. They said it was hard to sharpen, but held an edge very, very well. Miss Pam went from being a shoe habit to a knife habit. I hear you. Thank you, Tim. William will change your life if you let him. Lee H. No, it's not so bad. I'm inside right now, but it was just cool when I walked in. I'm in my study, and so it's probably about 61, 62 in here. I just walked in with this, just hadn't taken it off. I ate supper in there for I'm a little cool. One, it's health issue, and B, it's you're on blood thinners, and so you just get a little cool. So I've learned to add a little layers and just be happy. Steve Kingsbury, good evening, brother. Y'all gotta forgive me. I'm sorry. It's just pollen. The pine pollen is bad this year. Wade, Blackie, what do you think of carrying a tomahawk for heavier work? I carried a tomahawk all the time during your trips. I used a tomahawk for years as part of living history, and it's a very viable tool in the field. I like a kukri. My second choice is a tomahawk, to be honest. If you told me I can't carry a kukri, it's going to be a tomahawk because I can use it to good effect. That length of the handle gives me plenty of power. If it did break, I can whittle a handle for a tomahawk pretty easy. And it's a very useful field tool. Plus, being able to take that head off and use it as a scraper, as a secondary tool and stuff, real advantage. I think I've done, like, in my 15 years, I think I've done like a dozen videos on tomahawks and stuff like that. But I need to go back and revisit it a little bit. Randy T, the largest bore you got is a 5.77 Snyder. Big gun. Hardy, good evening. Jeff, if you're going to buy a 357 all-purpose leather gun, what would you buy? I would look at a Uberti Model 92 copy. There's a couple of different companies that makes it. I understand Rossi also makes one, which is a division of Beretta, which is also part of Pertasoli. Beretta and Pertasoli joined forces, and they got Taurus, and that bought Rossi and them. So they do make a 92 copy in 357. That's a good one. And so that would be a good choice. When you gonna do the drop a trap and say what's in the box video? Oh, there's too much down here in my neck of the woods that it might be a rattler, it might be a copperhead, it might be a ticked off coon, it might be whatever. Box traps are blind man's bluff. You just never know what you're getting. Oh, Charles Martin, I hear y'all the wind howling through. Y'all getting a lot of dust and wind. Zombie Nation, good evening. Blackie, how long does the pine pollen blitz last? Normally about 2 weeks, and we're about halfway through it. I'm hoping that when my event happens, it's over. All the little pine pollen pods on the end of the limbs have fallen off. Me and Bear were at his land not long ago, a week or so ago, and the wind blew through his cedar tree, and it looked like smoke came off the tree. It was just a cloud. You couldn't even see through it. It was so thick. So this year, like I said, is just a little more than average. So it'll kill. Blackie, tell us something that you learned in living history that most people would wouldn't ever know about. Oh, some of the old skills that we did. How to shoe a flintlock. What that means in English is the hammer comes down and hits the frizen and it makes the spark, right? Eventually that frizen gets wore down because the surface of it is really hard, but the core of it is soft. It's got to be, otherwise it'd snap. So this surface is just case hardened. And over enough shots, maybe 1,000, maybe 2,000, just depending on how good it was getting on there, that wears off. And so what you got to do is you grind it back smooth, sand it down smooth, and you're going to take a piece of a saw blade. Now, either you can put a torch on it, heat it up, then put case net on it and recase harden that, or you can do what we call shoe it, which means you take a saw blade, cut it out so it would fit on there perfectly, and silver solder it on, and do that and bring it back where it would work again. So you put another liner on it, so to speak, and do that. And I've known people that have shot flintlocks and shot muzzleloaders for years, and they've never heard that you can reshoe a frizen and make it keep going. Yeah, I learned from old guys. You know, I learned how to cast bullets and cast lead and cast fishing weights and everything else. A lot of them skills. How to cook, you know, make stew that was 2 squirrels, wood sorrel, and greenbrier, and I want to say dock, boiled together with birch sap mixed in. So it tasted kind of sweet. We called it sweet stew. There was stuff we tried back in them days. Oh, boy. Charles Martin, Blackie, do you ever carry a wedge with you so you don't have to baton a knife? I don't baton a knife, but usually if I need a wedge, I can just find a stick around there and whittle a wedge and make a wedge, you know, and just do that. I don't carry an extra metal wedge. Jeff, Blackie, we don't have snakes in Newfoundland. Oh, how much fun that would be. I was tickled when I went up to Ohio and got to running around on the riverbank with Dan Lutz. And he said, "This is the river." I went, "This is a river." Yes, this is a river. We call it a creek in Alabama. And it's wide open banks. What they call wild is like a park to me. And I'm going, y'all ain't even got a lot of snakes up here. Holy cow. You know, being able to just, you know, walk through these bushes and not be moving sticks out of the way, make sure you're not about to step on a moccasin or something. It just completely different world, you know. Harley Davidson, yep. Yeah. During COVID, Uberti and them, I think, kind of got bought out. I don't have hard accreditation, but there's a lot of people that have pointed out that certain models, certain runs just aren't happening anymore. And I kind of wonder if we're seeing where the end is coming, where especially if, you know, things go sideways, well, we're not going to see them bringing cap and ball guns in from Europe anymore, in from Italy. You know, because when you think about it, and we take it as granted having black powder, but black powder is a Class A explosive, you know, like dynamite. And Pyrodex and the substitutes are Class C flammables like other gunpowder. So the fact they even allow us to have black powder, you know, in modern day and time is kind of shocking when you think about it. Jeff, y'all don't have skunks, possums, or coons either. Yeah, but you do have moose. Ken Albridge, what part of a greenbrier is edible? It's a greenbrier is actually the gotcha vine. The very end of it, it comes off with the 2 suckers. You'll have a shoot coming up, and it'll be reaching out with the suckers. Go down the toward where between there and where the stickers start, and gently pull up. And at point X, you're gonna feel it's just gonna pop, just like nothing, come apart. All of that will be edible. The part below it will not, because as that stem matures, it woodies up and gets harder. See? And so this part is tender and edible, and then this part's too woody. And it's right there at that break point. You just learn just a certain amount of tension to slide up and pull, snap, and what comes off of your hand is edible. Ken, somebody you want to see? This gentleman runs a channel called eattheweeds.com. He's out of North Florida. Super guy for information. Not so much on camera. Just saying. So I tell people, if you want to learn what's edible, go to Eat the Weeds, watch his video, which is the video information is top notch. The camera work is a little sucky because you're looking at all this grass and bushes and everything else. And he said, well, right there is such and such. You don't go over and say, like, this is the greenbrier. He's showing you 40 plants at one time. So right there is greenbrier. So just follow his lead and say, okay, greenbrier. And then go research greenbrier and do your own search from there. Use him for a clue source. He's very, very good at that and showing you what is edible. Yes, Gray Wolf, I've seen that where they're working on a copy of the Adams revolver, and I hope it shows up. Technique. Thank you for asking. Doing pretty good. Yeah, Harley Davidson, a lot of times they do that. They will not start at 1. They'll start at a given number. And I remember getting another gun. It was not a muzzleloader, but I got a gun one time years ago, and I looked at the serial number. It was a 6-digit serial number. And I knew this gun had only been out less than a year. And it's like, how did they get a 6-digit serial number? And then I found out they just started at like 1 million. So mine was number 1000, like 335, I think it was. Mine was number 335. They started at 1 million. And then what it is, they're using that first digit to mean first year. So the number is 1 million. Next year there'll be 2 million, even though they only made 16,000 or whatever. See, every year they're going to change that first number so they can tell what year production it was made. Companies can just assign how they want to assign numbers. But 112, hello to Northwest Georgia. Well, Jasper, thank you very much. Charles, for looking for stuff in the desert, I would really recommend Cody Lundeen. I'll get it out in a minute. Y'all have to forgive me. Sometimes I have gray moments. Good night, Gary. Thanks for tuning in. Springer, what do you think about the Moore Garberg? Very nice knife. Plenty of meat in the backbone. Strong knife. I think it's a very good knife for field use. Most of the Moore knives across the board are good, but the Garberg was made to be like an American. Our knives are a little bigger and thicker and a little tougher than a lot of the Europeans, because a lot of the European stuff is dealing with softer woods than we're dealing with. And the Garberg is really set up for like our stuff. And so it's got the backbone and the strength to do it. Hardy, yeah, it'd be great if they would do that. The problem with it is whenever you start talking about making Kentucky rifles and stuff like that, a lot of that was just handmade stuff. And to make one in a mass produce, they got to kind of dumb it down, really, to speed up production. Otherwise, the cost is just ridiculous. Virginia Bushcrafter, good evening, sir. Thanks for tuning in. Matt Flannery, I don't know. With this cool and warm, they haven't hatched out yet. I haven't seen them. So fingers crossed, we're not going to have a problem. In the past, it hasn't been. But if we have enough warm weather ahead that they can hatch, definitely no later than when I planned it. So usually we don't have any problems out there at the lake because there's almost always a breeze. The lake does not have an official name. I call it Wind Song Lake because the wind is always singing out there. Even in August, there's a breeze. And so it keeps mosquitoes at a minimum because there's always a breeze blowing. Well, hello, Mitchell from San Diego. I hope you're doing well. Light fighter. Cool. It ain't the strangest place people have watched my videos, I can bet. Cap Sawyer, you said the cylinder base pin on 58 Remington Sheriff can't be removed, but I have seen videos of peeps filing enough material to do it. Do you recommend against this? I do, because that head of that pin where it goes back, that recoil shock of when it fires wants to go back. Remember, the cylinder is just sitting on it, but the firing, there's a lot of shock that goes through that pin, and that head, if you thin down that head, it'll get where it may crack and give you other problems. Remington played with that, of wanting to go it down and put just a little bitty tab you could just hang with a thumbnail. And they reported problems with it, where it would crack. And so, not saying that the modern replicas are any better than the originals, but I just think that, yeah, it'd be nice if it'd come out, but I've not had any problem with it not coming out. I can just slide it out, do what I got to do, slide it back into place, and still be able to lubricate it, cut grease screws on it to keep it, holding a little grease underneath the cylinder and all like that. So. Oh, 2020. I bet that'd be a hoot on Saturday night. Yeah, Sasquatch Jim. Yeah, Bear's definitely going to be there. I'm sure y'all will have long conversations. Michael, I do like the Kibler flintlock kits. They seem to be very, very nice. And I love muzzleloading. He's built a couple of different kits, and seemed to be a very quality made, well thought out kit with the proper gear in it. Tim Lacey, Blackie, are you going to be doing any leather do-it-yourself crafts soon? I may incorporate that a little later. I'm going to be doing the haversack here pretty soon. I want to do the haversack before I go to my gathering. And so I went and talked to the ladies at the surplus place, and yes, they do have the U.S. Army duffel bags in the Cordura, and they're running about $20 for one of them. So when we're talking about the haversack, I'm going to lay it out and show you how I took a haversack and just took it apart with a seam ripper to get this material. And so people want to do that. That's where you can get one and follow along and make your own haversack. And they do have several of them. So, Yeah, you bought the gray man. Now you got to wait. It'll be worth the wait. I promise you, it really will. It is an outstanding knife. It really is. William produces a fantastic product. It's just he's a one-man show. You're paying for custom, you're going to get custom, but custom takes time. Hardy, yeah, it'd be great if they did get bigger. You know, I'd like to see them expand out into some other different designs as well. I always wanted a Ferguson rifle. Most of y'all probably never heard of it, but you grab the trigger guard, it's flintlock, and you unscrew the trigger guard, and it's hooked to like a bolt that goes up to the chamber, and it unscrews down. You did like a one turn, and that dropped it, and you dropped the ball into the hole, and it rolled into the end of the chamber. Then you filled it full of powder. Then you turn the guard back, and that would seal off the chamber, and the powder that came to the top you then dumped in the pan so that you could prime and fire. It's from the 1700s, and it was a breech loading repeater, so to speak, in a flintlock. I always wanted to get one of them and play with it, or a one of old two shoots Markham's double barrels. That one was a rifle and one was a shotgun barrel, and they swiveled one on over and under flintlock. I always wanted to get one of those. Metalworks, Blackie, what are your thoughts on Heritage Arms pistol and New England shotguns? New England shotguns are really good, rugged, reliable field guns. And I've got one. I've had multiples of them over the years. Chamber adapters drop in, give you a whole lot of versatility. The Heritage Rough Riders, good field 22. Depending on the sights, depending on the gun. But most of the ones that I've shot, and I own one with dual cylinders, is more than accurate enough to be small game bunnies at like 20 yards as long as you can hold it. So, Wade, when and where is your get together? My get together is going to be held from the 7th till the 13th of April. It will take place at Geneva State Forest Lake. Geneva State Forest is the largest state forest in the state of Alabama. It butts up against Conecuh National Forest in the bottom of the state. So if you look at a map of lower Alabama, look for Sampson, Alabama, and Opp, Alabama. It's between those two, and you'll see this big, huge swath. I think it's like 7,000 acres is Conecuh National, and Geneva State is 7,000 acres. 7,000 acres for Geneva, and it's like 70,000 for Conecuh. And so that's biggest state park. There's only one lake in it. And what I tell people how to get there is, and we will be posting a drive-in video coming up very shortly, probably this coming week, next week. And all you do is you put in your GPS for Opp, Alabama, OPP. When you get to Opp, then put in Geneva State Forest Lake, and it will guide you straight to it. That's the shortest route in, the best road in. And I've had my followers, when they would come and camp at the lake for my gatherings, I always asked them to GPS pin it so that GPS would recognize it. When I first went out there was nobody coming. I'd go out there and I'd spend a week and never see anybody but the game warden roll through, or maybe the park ranger. That was it. And so it didn't know where to take it. And the first one we held there, William tried to drive in from Texas and put it in, and it put him way like a mile and a half all over, too far away. Today, it'll take you right to the lake because we've put enough info in for GPS to be able to recognize it. So that's where it's going to be held. Correct. Wait, NEF, H&R, and all of them is the same thing in 2017. However, H&R is coming back into business, and they're going to be making lever actions. I saw a thing at SHOT Show that H&R is back, and they're going to be doing lever actions now. Oh, man, Tim Lacey, you up there right at Dixie. I bet I've been to Dixie 2 dozen times. I ain't been to Dixie in a number of years, but it was when I was traveling on the road, driving a truck, if there was any way I could finagle it to go through Dixie, I went through Dixie Gun Works, and picked up supplies and gear and talked to people there. It was a great place. It'll kill. Good night. Thanks for dropping in. Yeah, Hardy, I like what they're doing. One of the big advantages that Dixie Gun Works had in the past was they had their mountain rifle that you could interchange percussion and flintlock. You unscrewed the drum and the flintlock dropped in place. And it was a flintlock. You could unscrew that, screw the drum back in, and put the next lock in. And so you had two locks and a drum, and you had two different ignition systems in the same gun. And a lot of the matches and all, it's the same gun, just ignition. So you could compete in the flintlock matches and in the open matches that were either or. And they quit doing that way back when. I thought Keebler, there'd be a good market for them to put that in as an option where you could get a flintlock, but also, if you paid an extra fee, get a fitted touch liner / drum and thing. Because if you're doing a later time period, like 49 Mountain, 49 Gold Rush, and you're wanting to use the guns, they were a lot of them converted to over to percussion. If you're doing Civil War after, you'd want a gun converted to percussion. And so it'd give them an option. Oh, Charles Martin, sorry. Blackie, my autocorrect is being stupid. What I was saying is, are you any good with the slingshot? Not that great anymore. When I was a young man, I did play a lot with a slingshot and got pretty good. But at my age, I haven't played with them in years. I discovered guns and I kind of got away from slingshots. But they can be very effective as a small game gathering tool. Michigan Silverback, good evening. I did get them in. I'm just not sure what to do with them, to be honest with you. If you would, tomorrow, send me another email and let's talk about it. I'm just not sure what to do with it. Okay. Yeah, Hardy, their Southern Mountain Rifle would be perfect for it. Yes, Ken Albridge paints his shirt red, had a over under, and the gun they used in the movie was an original over under, and it was a 54 caliber rifle and a 58 caliber shotgun, which would be a 28 gauge over under barrel. And that's what inspired Two Shoots Markham, who went to making the materials to make his own swivel. He was big in the 80s and early 90s in rendezvous, and he made and sold rifles like that, those swivel breech rifles. That's the official name of it, swivel breech. Glad to help, Michigan Silverback. Yes, Tim Late. They still have. Well, last I heard, there was a muzzleloader only season up there at Wheeler. I don't know if it's strictly just flintlock anymore, but us old timers that like flintlocks and old percussion guns, We're real small on the totem pole because the guys today are using those inline abominations. Scope mounted, looks like a Remington model 700, and it's a percussion gun. Yeah, right. But it's a muzzleloader. The only thing that thing has in common with a muzzleloader is the way you load it, you know. So it's just way for that modern, come on, you know. Which the very first time they allowed a muzzleloading season in Alabama, and that was back, I think it was real early 80s. And they announced the way they put it in the thing was guns using black powder as the primary propellant. Okay. Guys packed 30-06s with black powder and were trying to hunt with a scope 270 and 30-06 with black powder in the cartridge and claim was primary powder. So the very next year they had to say no, primitive gun utilizing iron sights, you know, percussion or flintlock, could not be anything else. And they've softened that now to they allow inlines and stuff. So, you know, times change. Hardy, the thing about it is the percussion came in the 1820s, but was not common. It was a city gun. You had to have really good supply lines because a flintlock gun, you had all you needed when you went to the trader was you needed flints, which you could make if you had any skill, but you can buy them if you could. And then you needed a mold, bar lead, and powder. That was it. The powder would be used to prime and load the gun. And so you had less use. When you have a percussion gun, it don't go bang unless you got caps. Period. And so in well-established areas near the big cities in the East, you could get percussion caps. And so, yeah, you'd see that. The early mountain man expeditions going out there were about all flintlock. And as it progressed into the 1830s, you saw caplock become popular because you're part of a big company. It wasn't just lone mountain men out there. We're talking about a group, a working company, like we think of people that go off work on an oil rig. You know, they're carrying 500 pounds of potatoes in a wagon. They're carrying 60 pounds of powder, 150 pounds of lead, you know, an entire case of caps. And so, it was viable like that. And then really the Civil War, you saw at the beginning, either way. And then by the end of the war, it was all percussion, unless it was some oddball unit that was just taking up the dregs in the rear. They may still have flintlocks. And then after the war, very rapidly, everything turned to cartridge after that. So the percussion firearms only existed about 40 years before they became cartridge firearms. And that's the reason we see the 1860s and all like that, pistols, cartridge conversions right after the war. People were converting them or getting rid of them for the cartridge gun, you know. And but they still kept making percussion caps. They still kept selling powder and lead. It was I think it was World War II is when they officially stopped making percussion caps because they were still, and remember, we're not doing reenactment yet. These are people just got granddaddy's old gun still using it. And so percussion caps were still being made and sold for use in these type of guns up till World War II. And then after World War II, when everything went to going back up, you would have thought they wouldn't come back. But by 1950s, that's when you saw the reenactment start happening, and people started talking about Crockett and Boone and all like that. And percussion guns started being made and brought back out of the closet. And the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association started doing their bit, and it became more popular. There are more percussion guns today than ever were in history. I remember somebody pointed out, I think it's about 2005, 2008 or something, but they pointed out that Uberti had exceeded Colt's production, total production that Colt had ever produced of the 1860 Army. Uberti had outperformed it. They had gone past that number in reproductions, you know, and it's really kind of wild when you think about it that we're talking about a gun that was around 100 and some odd years ago, back over that 200 years ago. Now we're coming up on 200 years. You know, 200 years ago was the 1820s. So a 200-year-old design, you can still go today and buy, somebody will build you a cap lock, or you can buy an off-the-shelf cap lock. That is like, where are the swords? That would be like buying a Roman gladius, you know, and still using it today as an everyday tool. It is really a mark in history, that the fact that we even still speak about these guns being so old and such an old design, that flintlocks and trade guns and Northwest trade guns and everything are still talked about, is really kind of astounding, you know, when you look at it. Tim Lacey, I've been to Colonial Williamsburg. I have held the gun in my hand that's in the video from the 1960s when Wallace Gessler was there. Me and my wife on our honeymoon 36 years ago. We went on a big multi-state and we ended up at Colonial Williamsburg. And I got to actually hold that gun that he built in that video. I got to hold it. They got it hanging up on the wall over the rifling machine in there. So yeah, it's pretty awesome to watch them. Virginia bushcrafter, I understand it can be a challenge, and that's one of the reasons we still do it today. It's the challenge, just like archery or anything else. Repent now, Blackie. Do you think a 22 caliber, air rifle makes a good survival rifle, not just for small game, but for bigger game in case of things go sideways? If it's powerful enough and it will be accurate enough, yes. Especially in the 22. We used to sell at Walmart a single pneumatic pump 22 caliber rifle that came with a scope, 3x9 scope on it, and the pellet was running 1,000 feet per second. Okay, 22 short cartridge out of a rifle runs 750 feet per second. So that air rifle is automatically more powerful. What was called standard velocity 22 long rifle was around 1,000 feet per second. High velocity, like the Stingers and stuff like that, they were real revolutionary. They came in the 80s. So 40 years ago, 1,000 feet per second was a regular 22 rifle, like we rabbit and squirrel hunted with, and it was used for that. Now, could it at close range in a survival situation? If it's running around 1,000 feet per second, because the weight of the pellet's the same as the weight of a bullet, yeah, it can be used against something deer size at very close range and good placement. I would not recommend it, but in a survival situation, I'd light that sucker up, to feed the family. It's all about bullet placement. It's all about it. And they're very viable. Plus, you go buy a 10 of 500 of the 22 caliber 36 grain pellets. They're like $8 or $10. That's cheaper than a brick of 22. A brick of 22 is $30-something today. Whereas a single pump accurate air rifle, we've got a group that comes to the shooting range I'm part of, And a lot of times in my videos, you hear the shooting going on in the background because I'm part of that shooting range. They get down there and they shoot out to 75, 80, 100 yards with their air rifles. And they're keeping all shots under an inch at way out there. These guys are serious. Of course, the cost of them air guns they're shooting is, you know, about the price of my car. But yeah, air guns can be viable. It just how well you do it. That's the thing. And would be actually very practical, especially if you could get a little bit of mold and make your own 22 caliber pellets to go in it. I have seen a 22 caliber bullet mold for an air rifle pellet. So oh, cool, Mudslinger. Harbor Trail, fire is dwell time. Exactly. How long does it dwell in that zone to reach the combustion, hold it there, and get everything going? Not just flash, dwell time. How long is it going to hold it? That's something that they don't think about. They don't point out often. Hardy, I agree. We're living in a golden age because of this right here. You know, I did a college presentation for one of my classes. I don't remember the exact class, to be honest, but I do remember the class. And I pointed out that it took the Black Plague. So many people died that so many sets of underwear and undershirts and stuff were available that they could make rags out of them. Fabric had been very, very expensive to this point. And they were so cheap because of that. They tore the rags up and made rag paper that the Guggenheim Press could print books for the common man to be able to read. Before that, you had to be rich or had to be a priest to have a book. You know, books were rare, very expensive. Only the rich, elite, or powerful had books. And suddenly there was a supply of paper that made it cheap enough you could sell to just a common person. That was the first step. The next big leap happened whenever we got radio. Because in early programming and radio, they didn't have a lot to do a lot of times, or a lot of people didn't know what to do with this medium yet. And so they'd simply read books on the radio, what today we'd call an audio book. But some farmer's kid in the middle of Iowa, milking the cows every few hours, could sit and listen to the works of Shakespeare or some other great thing and be inspired. The radio allowed us to do that. Then TV came in after World War II, and suddenly you could teach, you could learn, you could see and hear anything. Not only would it just read it on a piece of paper, but movies had come in the 20s, and now you could go see it visually and hear it and understand. By World War II, we got talkies, you know. Now we could pass on information, massive scale, and learning and teaching. You know, now we've got internet where you can find information on any topic you want. You can become an expert. You can be better educated than the professors of my generation simply by putting in the time and research yourself. It's available to you right now. We just don't see how awesome and that never existed before now. And so old farts like me that would not have an outlet to share this lifetime of information of gathering these old skills of woodscraft and bushcraft and outdoor and being a steward of the land and stuff, I'd never be able to. You'd have to live next to me to be able to know any of it, because you just, you know, the guy I met at such and such, my lodge buddy or whatever, that'd be it. But because of this, I can talk to people all over the world, and I have followers all over the world. So it is a time that we can get the information. It's just unbelievable. Ken Aldridge, the air rifle used by the Lewis and Clark expedition was a Garibaldi. Blackie, do you have a favorite Shakespeare play? Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. That one. That's my favorite play of Shakespeare. So, and is a word. That's it, Giordani, yes. Yeah, every time I see the word, I think of Gerardia, but you know, hey. Homs Tickle H Quarter, HQ, good evening. Welcome. Glad that the UK is listening. Charles Martin, if we want to learn something or do something, go to YouTube. Exactly. You know, in the past, they controlled it. I remember a thing back in the 70s where a young man for a high school science project built a nuclear bomb. Of course, it didn't have the actual bomb material in it, but he made a model of it down to the detail. And the FBI raided the place, won't know where he got this info. And he had gone back and read historic books, science books, and pieced together pieces and pieces and parts till he could make a model of it. But it was so rare. I mean, where'd you get this? Today, you want to know how to build anything, work on your car, whatever, punch it in. Somebody will show you, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be right, but it'll give you at least a good working idea. Twister, hello to France. I believe it. I'm drawing a blank on the name, but I believe it is Macbeth. You know, when he says, when he asks, what was that sound? And he turned and said, the queen, my lord, is dead. And he turns around and said that death would have been better tomorrow. And tomorrow and tomorrow. That, oh, how's that go? The poor actor that struts upon the stage, full of vigor and thunder, signifying nothing. Is an idiot. I have to go back and rewatch that again. Patrick Stewart did it on the BBC where they were doing it as like a modern world go to hell type apocalyptic type thing that was really good. He did really good at, but you know, I've read quite a few things. Yep, Macbeth. That is it. That's Macbeth. Is this a dagger of the mind stretched out, handled before me? Yes, I have the poor man's James Bond series. I remember it. WC Knives, Gray Man, take over your Blackbird. Thanks in advance. I'm not giving up my Blackbird. You know, I still love my Blackbird. But I was kind of spoiled, to be honest, because I'd had my prototype 10 plus years. And then I got the Blackbird. And then if you notice, I went running the Blackbird instead of my prototype. And but I've been using that all them curves for so long, picking up a straight knife, it started feeling kind of awkward. You know, even like a kitchen knife. I was all the time carrying my knives into the kitchen to use to cut up supper cut. We're butchering this up, we're cutting this up. We get the big hunk of meat and I'd cut it up into steaks or whatever. And I'd use my WC knife, use my Blackbird. And so I wanted, whenever they presented me with that Gray Man, I decided to give it a year, and because it's like a blowed up Kephart, and refresh my memory of a straight edge knife. And so I've been using it now a little over 6 months. and I'm very, very happy with it. But I'm not getting rid of my blackbird either. And you will see the blackbird, all three of them, in videos of the gray man and the two blackbirds in future videos, depending on what I'm doing. Crossover Paranormal Society, good evening. Yep, bubble, toil and trouble. Jerry, according to William, they're never out of stock. He will do them. You just got to contact one of his dealers. And if you'll go to his site and look up the dealers, you can put in to get one. Tarot Destroyer, I understand. There are things that call to you that you have to do. I understand that. I drove 6 hours one time just to go up and say my respects that somebody meant a lot to me that had passed away and been buried, and I didn't know about it. When I found out I had to drive that 6 hours, cost me my job. I got fired over it. I didn't care. But I understand. When it's time, you'll move on. Tim Lacey, WC knives or artwork? They are. He is the mad knife wizard, boy. And he makes great knives. Tim Harper, the run that's supposed to deliver in April, everything is shipped except if you ordered a rucksack or haversack. Those are shipping out Friday, tomorrow, because they're actually in a box right there. I've already got them labeled and done, but they go to the post office tomorrow. So they will ship out tomorrow, coming to you. So if you order just a Weehawk or a Sparrowhawk, those have already shipped. If you order rucksacks or combinations with rucksacks and haversacks and other bags, those are shipping tomorrow, because I got the last box in today. And so I will ship them out tomorrow. Oh, cool, Sasquatch. Well, good evening and sleep well. Thanks for dropping in. Twister, I hear you. Brett, of the WC knives, what are the different strengths of the Blackbird versus the Gray Man? Okay, the Blackbird having all those curves of the woodsman's grind. If you're doing bushcraft stuff, the Blackbird's the way to go, because it's better on working around round stuff. Because, cutting sticks and stuff like that, making traps, making tent pegs, whatever. It's a bushcrafter knife, which is what it was designed to be. Whereas the Gray Man with a straight edge does a good job as well, but it's really lends itself more to the straight cuts and stuff like that. You can do bushcraft with, like I said, just a grown up Kephart. The Blackbird just has a little better edge. Not in I will not, let me rephrase that. A little more advantage in the bushcraft field because of the woodsman's grind versus the straight edge of the Kephart. That's the difference between them. I would not feel naked with either one. I mean, I am very, very happy with both of them. Repent now. No, the 177 is a very light pellet. It's like 20 grains or less. And that's the reason it doesn't penetrate. Here's the best visual I can give you. A golf ball and a ping pong ball are roughly the same size. How far can you throw a ping pong ball? Throw it so you think your arm's about to come out of socket. As hard as you can throw it, it'll go maybe 15 yards, something like that. How far can you throw a golf ball? 75, 80 yards, easy. It's because of mass, weight, in motion stays in motion. And although the 177 may get to the target very fast, once it gets there, it's like that ping pong ball. It loses it too fast. It doesn't penetrate. Whereas an actual 22 pellet gun has the same weight as a standard 22 cartridge gun. So it does have the mass to penetrate in. You know, it won't penetrate. It'll just go in like a half inch or something like that. Other than, of course, it is illegal to attack such animals with that. We're talking about survival here. The 22 would be my choice over the 177 because it simply does not have the penetration ability. Charles Martin, Blackie, when were you talking about blades? On Sunday. Those are really interesting videos. This coming Sunday, I haven't decided which one I'm putting out yet, but I have not done a knife video. I've done one on field shirts, which is either probably going to be posted tomorrow. And then I've done my big Blackbird talking about all the products one that I'll either put on tomorrow or it will go up on Sunday. So I haven't got a knife video lined up at the moment, but there is more stuff to come. I still got to go back and do some more stuff with the skillet. I left y'all hanging on that because I got derailed into all this other stuff. And I've got a couple other videos I've got to cough back up. It's just, you know, I'm old and I get sidetracked by things in life. Light Finger Concepts. How do you find a knife with a 90-degree spine? Most of them will, if it's a bushcraft knife, they'll advertise it because they're trying to do for bragging rights and let you know what it is. You can make a 90-degree spine just by taking a file and getting it there and filing it down. You'll get a sharp edge on either side. That'll work. But a true 90-degree edge is made up on the knife to begin with. And so that 90-degree spine gives you that scraping ability to make those fine little curls and stuff for like sanding it. And you get fine dust off of it for making fires and stuff like that. And usually if it's a bushcraft knife, they're going to say it's got a 90-degree spine, if it does. Ken Albers, Blackie, have you handled the new WC Combatter Survival Knife? I have not, but I'm sure next time I see William, I'll get to handle it because he always brings, whenever he comes to see me, he brings a bucket of knives, and we sit and talk knives. Correct. Repent now. A bow is a better choice in most cases of that because you can make your own stuff. And definitely when we're talking long term, you need the skill because you're going to run out of bullets. You're going to run out of something. But bow and arrow, you can make your parts. So, Gray Wolf, anyone else feel they have too much gear? Oh, yeah. That's why Blackie has to put up the barrier. Otherwise, they'll be going, Blackie, what's that? What's that? What's that? And all the stuff Blackie's got. Blackie, do you think that the whole spine has to be 90-degree or just an area of steel with a rounded bust up? It can be either. Let me see. Where is... Okay. If, for say, this was kind of rounded and this right here was 90-degree, yeah, that'd work well because you don't want just a little narrow piece. You want to be able to do like that, drag a section. So you at least need like 2 inches, okay, of 90-degree to be able to get a bear down and get the shavings off of it. You see one of the knives, I forget which one it was, I think that Bear Grylls had like a 1.5 inch piece right there at 90 degree. And it was for a ferro rod, you know, to do. So if it had like 2 inches there and the rest was rounded, that would be fine. Especially if it's a bigger knife that you plan on gripping the blade and using it as a draw knife. This up here not being at 90 degrees would be an advantage to you, so that you could not, so it wouldn't wear on your hands as much to grab and pull and draw. So have a 90 degree there. That would work, you know. Yeah, although I've seen that as well, where you have the butt of the knife will have a striker area. That works well too. And on several of Williams' knives, he has that exposed tang back there. That's a good 90 degree on it, and you can bear down and do like that. It also works well in carving a spoon. You can put it in there and do like that and help kind of rough out a bowl with it. But that on the base, I like that a lot for that very reason. Yeah, great. Well, as long as it's just a good sharp edge, it's not rounded over. It doesn't have to be exact. Charles Martin, Blackie, can you do a video on ferro rods, what you think are good and what aren't? I will be glad to talk about ferro rods and what I have found in my experience. Sure. Ken Albridge, yeah. What's in the box? Yeah, what's back there? Yeah. Monty Hall, let's make a deal. What's behind curtain number 1? Repent now, yes. Intestines make a very strong rawhide. Deer, things like that, you clean them out, split them, and then cut them down so they're like a 1/2 inch wide, as long as you can get. And then while they're still wet, twist them, and you'll make a bowstring like cordage out of them. They can be very strong. Matt Flaherty, good night. Justin Coon, good night. Thanks for dropping in, brother. Michigan Silverback, yeah, just drop the curtain. Dude, we'll be here all night. Because Blackie, what's in that tub? What's in that tub? What's that? It's just my storage area for all my gear, you know. But everybody wants it. What's Blackie got? Yeah, because of the years and experience, and you know, when you've been quote quote gathering stuff for 60 years. Yeah, I got some good stuff that I picked up over the years. So, right place, right time, got lucky. Simple Sojourner, Blackie, what knife do you carry in your pocket most days? Every day in my pocket, my EDC on lanyard is my Victorinox Fieldmaster. Every day, that's on my pocket. Every day. That's my number one choice for a go-to pocket knife. Now, having said that, I got knives all the way around me. You know, a lot of days, I consider this like if you put your pants on, you put this on. I may then also slide another pocket knife in because I just want to use this knife. I've got a tub full of pocket knives. And so I just, you know, old timers, that's reading up here in front of me. I've got several, you know, Boy Scout knives. I got a bunch of knives because I'll need to open up a letter. I'll grab a knife. You know, I love playing with pocket knives and doing stuff. And coming up, I carried one all the time. Usually a big lockback was my go-to for 20 years. I've still got that knife and I've showed it in videos. It was a K-Bar 1607. And I carried it from the time I was 8 years old till I was 28 years old. And I finally retired. It's so worn out. The lock barely works on it. And the blade has been sharpened down. I mean, that I have worn out pocket knives. Let that sink in. I didn't break one. I didn't lose one. I wore out pocket knives. I did a lot of work. Aldo, have you found a big difference between Mitch metal and fire rods? I remember McCain mentioned that there was a difference. I know the Chinese ones aren't good. What do you prefer? I have mixed metal, mixed match metal, mash metal, whatever they want to call it. Mitch metal, miscellaneous metal. And it seems to work better for me because whenever you do bear down, you get a bigger hunk off of it. And I like the softer rods for that reason, because if I do a light scrape, I get a light sparks. If I bear down, I get a lot of sparks. And it just depends on my weather conditions. And I've worn out three. In 5 years, from 2020 to now, I've worn out 3 ferro rods and had to change them out and just replace them. Where I wore it down, it broke or it became a point. I don't use them on camera. That's for me, you know. And lighting the fire in the fireplace of the house, I'd use my ferro rod, you know. And it just to keep the practice in, keep the hand skills going. And I kind of like the softer ones, to be honest. That's just me. Paladin, will people be selling, giving away items at the gathering? Yes. People can do trade blankets and etc. Usually I give away some stuff that's just where people have donated or whatever, and I may have some old gear at the time, and I just throw it down a trade blanket, and everybody draws, puts names in a hat, and we draw names. But if somebody wants to bring something, they want to throw in a trade blanket to sell or whatever, feel free. Go right ahead. Okay, Blackie, if you had a choice between a machete or a hatchet, if so, which one? I would choose a hatchet. Where I live in the woods that I'm using, the machete is superior for cutting a trail and etc. Works great. It is inferior with my woods for cutting firewood and splitting firewood and stuff like that. It really tasks it to do that. A hatchet, on the other hand, is my preferred because I'm going to be splitting stumps to get the fat wood out for making fire starters and stuff like that. And it's just too heavy a job for the machete. I have a really good machete. Use a machete. But that's the reason I like a kukri. A kukri is kind of a blend between a hatchet and a machete. It's long enough, thin enough, strong enough. I can use it like a machete to get them vines out of the way, so I can make a path through here. Yet it's got enough backbone and spine I can split kindling and stuff like that to make fires with. That's the reason I choose a kukri. I've done with a machete, I've done with a hatchet, and my compromise on both is a kukri. So that's where that comes from. Oh, good. Scott Carlson, yeah. You select what you're going to need for your minimum overnight and dial it in from that. It's always got to be your personal choice, what you need to be comfortable. Zombie Nation, I hear you. I never cared for flying. It's okay. I'm not one of them people that's scared of it. I just never cared for it. Because you take off and you're doing like this, going up, going up, going up, going up. Okay. And then you're going into Atlanta, you're like this coming in, and everything's floating up in the cabin because they're diving at the runway. And then, whomp, okay, now we're on the runway. I never like that diving in. It's always like falling, too much like falling to me. Okay, Aldo, ever have trouble storing wool? How do you keep them out in center? Do you store with cedar? Yes. My favorite way to do it, if you're doing it in a garage or something, you don't have space in the house, is go get an all metal trash can, put your stuff in it, and then at the top, about that far down from the top, put a piece of cardboard, cut it, fairly thick cardboard, so that you push it in, it's full size, like a wad, like a pizza, circle, sit it in there. And then on top of it, you put red cedar shavings. Okay. And then in the lip of the metal trash can lid, run Vaseline inside that groove and press that down. We've stored stuff in barns before for years. They're outdoors, basically. They're in a barn. And no rodent and no ants, no nothing's getting into it. Because no insect likes the smell of cedar, and the rodents can't gnaw through that steel can. So as long as the lid's secured down where something can't knock it loose, you're good. In a house, yes, add cedar. If you don't want to just pour it in there, you go to the pet department where the Walmart and them, they'll have cedar shavings to go into a rabbit cage. Get the red cedar shavings. Then go over to the women's section and get a pair of pantyhose. Put a big hunk into a leg, cut it, tie it off, and bend that around and put it inside the storage box with your wool. It smells like cedar. We like the smell of it, and no insect likes it. So the roaches, the bugs, the ants, nothing will go into your wool, and you'll be okay. All glad to help. Yeah, the Vaseline in the groove, no ant can go in. That way, they don't like the smell, but they can't go in around that seal. And so the Vaseline and anything that else, I mean, we stored stuff like that for years. We lived in a place that we had a barn out back. It used to have tractors and stuff in it. And so a lot of my gear had to just go out there. There was no room in the house. And my stepmother was not going to allow all that stinky, nasty stuff in her. You had one little bit of closet, so my field gear and stuff like that. No, we don't need that. You just need school clothes. And so I just went to buying trash cans and storing it out there, and put a bungee cord from the handle up to the handle and back down to the other handle. So it held the lid down firm. I could stack on it. And yeah, does a good job. Washburn Billy, Blackie, when all you have is just your hands, how do you get good water? You come up to a water source, be it a lake, whatever. What you're looking for is a sandy patch. You may have to go up and down the bank till you find something kind of sandy. You get out, here's the water's edge. You go up the hill, a foot or two up the hill into the sandy area, and you dig straight down with your hands, digging out the sand. You get something about the size of a basketball. Keep going down. You're going to hit mud. Keep going. Go down at least one hand's depth, 4 inches below that. Dip out all that mud you can, and then stop. The water will flow in. What's happening is you have cut down to the water table, and the water is being forced through all that dirt into that hole. Well, here's the thing. Water that was already in that layer, there ain't nothing living in it. Everything we consider dangerous, like bacteria, gerardium, viruses, they all need light. Not a lot of light, but they need light. And so they're out in the flowing water, in that swampy water. In here, in that coyote well you've just dug, that's been pre-filtered, so to speak. Now, that water is not necessarily pure, but it's a lot cleaner, safer to drink. It shouldn't have anything alive in it, because that water's flowing from the ground into that water, because you've cut down to the water table. It's not that surface water that's over here flowing in the stream. It's the groundwater flowing in that hasn't been exposed to the air and doesn't have the contaminants in it. That's the safest way I know to get water with just bare hands. Sir Malcolm, doing real well. Oh, cool. Engineering is your trade. Gotcha. That's exactly the reason. By putting it in those steel cans, one, they don't rust very fast because their outside trash cans are galvanized. Okay. So the metal isn't going to deteriorate quickly. Two, by adding that Vaseline and that seal, we're sealing out the environment so humidity and etc. doesn't get in around that seal. It's acting like a soft O-ring and keeping the air inside the can dead. It's not not getting in and out, pollen, whatever, circulating into the can. It seals the can. Then the cedar chips guarantee no insect's going to get anywhere near it. How long can those cedar chips last? About a year in a can like that. Maybe once a year you need to open it up, check everything, air it out, fluff it, put it back in, and put the stuff back in. Add in some mothballs in the bottom of it. And you won't have mold and stuff in it either, depending on your environment, what you're up against. But we learned that as well. We would take and put a sock, a thin sock, and we would put 8 or 9 mothballs and put them in the very bottom of the can. That naphtha smell would come up through it and keep mold or mildew. If what you're storing in there could mold or mildew, but mold, mildew needs air circulation and etc. You're sealing it off with the Vaseline, and the cedar also pulls that down. So between those three, you're safe to store stuff long term out there. I learned that trick from an old military guy that was in World War II in the island hopping campaigns. You're in a tropical island. How do you store stuff to keep it from rotting and etc. because you're in a tropic? And they put them inside metal trash cans and sealed it up, and so it made a big difference. Oh yeah, repent now, agreed. Charles Martin, which thing are you asking work? Are you talking about doing the water in the desert, or are you talking about the storage stuff in the desert? Good night, Ken. Be safe. Aldo, underground caches, plastic is better. But you can make the metal, take a galvanized can, and then you go down and you get roofing tar. Do you know what that is? It's this black gooey stuff you use to patch holes in the roof, and you paint the outside of the can with roofing tar, and it'll keep the steel from rusting. And then you want to dig a hole, put rocks in so any water drains away. Make sure you're above the water table. So what we always did was you dig a hole, cover it up, give it a month, come back. Is that hole full of water, got water in the bottom of it? You don't want to put your stuff in if it does. If there's no water in the bottom of it, you put some rocks in the bottom of it, you set your can in, you pour sand all the way around it to help. We take a 5-gallon bucket of sand and pour sand all the way around it. When we get up within like 4 to 6 inches of the roof, that's when we put our cover on there of something. We like to use the rubber plastic liners that come on the top of pallets. People that work at Walmart or any kind of big business where you get a whole pallet of something, quite often between the pallet and whatever's been shipped, there's this thin piece of plastic that's, kind of about the same as a cutting board plastic, a thin flexible cutting board, but it's 4x4. We'd take those and put it down over the can and then put the dirt on top of that to camouflage it. And that's how we'd cache that way. So that when you came back, you only had to go down 4 inches to hit the plastic. Once you hit the plastic, you went to the edge and just lifted the whole thing up out of the dirt, and you could just pull the lid off the can and pull your stuff straight out of the can. Rapid fire. It didn't take a lot of time to get back into your cache. Yep, 55-gallon drums. For that, they work well. Well, guys, that's been 1 hour and... Hold on a second, I got a question. Light Fighter Concepts, what's your traditional camping meal? Traditional camping meal. Oh, there's a lot of those. But if you were to say what would be the one that would stick out to me, it would be a beef roast stuck on a spit over a nice hot hickory fire to cook slow. And you come up and you slice meat off as it gets done. You slice it off until you get down to the rare and you go to eating it. That's one of my favorite campfire meals. And then you take potatoes still in the skin and just lay them in the coals, or wrap them up in aluminum foil and lay them in the coals, which I like to take an onion, wrap it up in aluminum foil, add some butter in it, wrap it up, a potato or two, wrap it up, put those in the coals so that as I'm roasting the meat, I'm baking that onion and baking those potatoes. And so as I'm slicing off the meat, about the time I got a good pile of meat, those potatoes and that onion is done. And that's the sides for it. So that would be my, if I was going to pick a picturesque meal for us to make at an event, that'd be the one I'd do. Repent now. It will become more developed, but at the same time, there's a lot more open space than there is the city space. More people live in cities than live in the country today. And I saw there was a professor from MIT that came to talk to the Mensa class that I was part of. And he pointed out that if you took everybody in the United States and gave them 1,400 square feet, you could put the entire population of the United States in Texas, and the rest of the United States would be empty. That's how much space there is between cities that even today isn't developed. So getting out of the cities and getting out into the rural areas, yeah, it will develop some, but there's always going to be those wilder areas, those further back in, the less populated areas. You just got to keep going. That's what drove us west in the first place. Got no elbow room. Got to go west, until we hit the West Coast. But there's still room to go west. There's still room to go out there and find. Well, guys, we're going to call it quits. So I really appreciate y'all dropping in. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed the chat tonight. Thank you so much. I plan on being back in here next Thursday night. And so that may be my last one. But no, there will be 2 more of these before my gathering. That's right. So, guys, y'all have a great night. God bless. And we'll see you next time. Take care.